Introducing Instagram Teen Accounts, a new way to keep your teen safer as they grow, like making sure they always have their seatbelt on.
All right, buckle up. Good job.
New Instagram Teen Accounts, automatic protections for who can contact your teen and the content they can see.
McCormick knows unbeatable flavor starts with the right spices. It's why we created Flavor Sealed. So anytime you peel back the seal of McCormick herbs and spices, you can be confident they will pack the same amount of flavor as the day they were packed. The kind of flavor that brings out the best of your favorite recipes and keeps everyone coming back for seconds, or maybe even thirds. McCormick, Flavor Sealed for unbeatable flavor.
To the Fantasy Footballers DFS and Betting Podcast with your hosts, Kyle Borganoni and Matthew Betz.
Welcome to the month of May here on the Fantasy Footballers DFS and Betting Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Borganoni, and I am joined, as always, by Matthew. It's going to be May Betz.
We're here, baby. Summer of best ball is officially upon us. The NFL draft is in the rearview mirror. We know where all these rookies went in the NFL draft as far as draft capital, which was a huge factor in what we do with the rankings. And we know the landing spot as far as their teams and everything like that. So what a great time to draft some teams, man. The weather is beautiful. Not too hot yet, but like nice enough to be outside. Firing up the grill, maybe a little early for the pool, but you can always mow the grass. I mean, that's certainly there. Getting outside with the kids. It's just a great time to, think we know what's going to happen, but let's be honest. No one knows anything. And that's what we're going to talk about today.
Like even if it's like it's raining today, and I thought to myself, I could still mow the lawn because it's best ball season. You just kind of make sure that you get everything in for the summer of best ball and just do it all at once.
You mow the lawn when it rains?
No, I don't do that.
I just
thought about it.
We need to have a conversation if that's an actual thing that you're doing.
No, I'm not a fool. I have done that before in my youth where I was like, I'm just going to do it. Miserable.
Doesn't work.
Miserable experience. Yeah, we're excited for the summer of best ball to kick it off on this podcast. We will talk about some of our early rankings, which will be released on our website and on mobile. So if you're one of those people that have the Ultimate Draft Kit Plus, you have the DFS Pass, our best ball rankings are live. And then a month from now, we come out with our huge collaborative project that Betz and I do, which is called the Best Ball Primer. We walk through all 32 teams, what each player and what each team has to do at their cost. So if you're one of those people that's been playing best ball for a while, I think this episode, we're going to change it up from what we've done in the past. If you're new to best ball, then we would invite you into the conversation we get to have on Discord. We talk about a lot of strategy. If you're new to roster construction, all that stuff, we can talk through all those things together. But yeah, after the NFL draft, we turn the page on this podcast and we mostly focus on best ball drafts for the next 3 months?
3 months, 4 months, if you're one of those people that goes all the way up till week 1 when these tournaments close. So yeah, man, it's officially here. We get to draft all of May, June, July, and August. And what I love about best ball, especially the fact that it goes, throughout the entire summer, is that each time you draft in these little buckets, like, May and then June, and once we get to training camp, all of those kind of ADP landscapes, it's a different game, right? Like players will rise and they'll fall, and it's just a different landscape when you draft. So we like to draft all summer long. I know some people prefer to wait because then you get more information, but then if you draft early, you get some ADP values and that sort of thing. So there's arguments for both sides, but the best way to just handle all this, just draft all summer.
Yeah, back porch with a little drink.
I mean, brother, that's what we're talking about right there.
Yeah. Do you think, so when I come to visit you in 3 weeks or whatever, you think you and I sit on your back porch, you'll make me a drink and we'll draft together?
That sounds fantastic. Unfortunately, it's not a porch. We have a deck. But
okay,
if that will suffice for your drafting location needs, then yes, we will do that.
Do I have somewhere to sit?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. I mean, if I needed to draft just sitting on the ground right there, I'm totally fine with that too.
Deck with no furniture, no grill, nothing, just empty deck.
You just tell your kids, like, just go out there.
Yep. Just stand.
A slab. It's just a concrete slab. We also are going to start a video series this year, which will be available in the UDK Plus. So if you're one of those people that get to walk with us through the summer, we'll be doing videos for DFS. Some of it will be 101 stuff for people that are just starting out, but then some advanced strategy where Betz and I will take some of the conversations we have on the podcast and go a little bit further. We're also going to be producing some DFS content videos. If you're one of those people, you're like, man, you guys always talk about roster percentages. What was that episode where you talked about it? We're going to take the best of the best of what we do and have it available in video form. If you're one of those people that, I just need to refer back to what they said, we will give you some short little videos for that. So all of that will be included in the Ultimate Draft Kit Plus. So go to ultimatedraftkit.com if you want to be in on that. Last week, we gave our post-NFL draft betting, reactions. We got to see day 2, day 3. I've been in the weeds of here's what this team did and here's why they reached on this player. And it's driving me crazy because I'm looking at the data and just saying, this is what this says. I'm getting a lot of people responding to me saying, you think this player's a bust now. And the internet's a tough place, man, because I'm not trying to give de facto, like, this is what this means. Instead, I'm just trying to give information people to play with, but they're not happy about it. They're not happy about the data.
You sound like you're getting bullied online, man. Is that happening?
No, I think it's more of that people see data and they want it to be predictive. Every single piece of data has to mean, oh, well, this must mean that. And it's like, no, this means what happened, not what will happen.
Okay, well, Kyle, you just tell those dorks on the internet that, they need to just watch the film and they'll figure it out.
Yeah, if they would just watch the film and then ignore the data guys, they would be totally fine. I do have a quick question for us before we get into some best ball rankings and best ball strategy. You, my friend, started typing away at the computer because you think in 2025 people actually read an article. Joke's on you, man. Nobody reads anymore. But the title of your article is on our website. It's called Deciphering Uncertain Depth Charts in Best Ball. And I think this is one of the best things at this point in the process, right after the NFL draft, of us looking at certain teams and saying the market's too overconfident in this. We can wait and see what the team says about this. So let's talk about a couple of situations that you highlighted with depth charts and then how we apply that to best ball.
Yeah, I think the first reaction after the NFL draft is everybody labels players as winners or losers. And we do that too, right? Everybody does
Everybody's a loser. They're all losers.
You all lost. But we also need to remember that it's May. It's May 1st when we're recording this show. It's May 2nd when you're listening. We have so much time for things to change. So sometimes when we draft as if we think this is what the depth chart is going to be, gets you in a lot of trouble. Sometimes when you get to training camp, you get rug pulled on the guy you thought was the RB2. All of a sudden they fell down the depth chart, or I don't know, the player doesn't even make the team, or some things like that. Like, we just don't know right now. And I think it's a good time to take a step back and just look at some of these uncertain situations. And that was my goal for the article when I wrote it. I could come up with like 15 situations that I think are completely uncertain, but I picked the first like 5 or 6 that I think are the most relevant, starting with, yet again, for the second year in a row, the Dallas Cowboys running back. Because we went into the NFL draft, everybody said they spent nothing on Javonte or Miles Sanders. Like, surely they're going to take one of the top 5 or 6 running backs in this class. They did not. And so now we're kind of stuck with the same questions as last year. Is like, we were drafting Zeke. Like, it's funny in hindsight to say that, but like, we were drafting Zeke and Rico saying, we don't know the situation. We think one of these guys could emerge. And if you bet on both guys, obviously the portfolio approach, those Zeke teams didn't look great. Those Rico teams looked incredible. And when I look at the team again this year, not a single running back is going above RB40. That is where Javonte Williams is going in ADP currently on Underdog. It's another similar situation where they're nice targets, I think, as part of the zero RB builds or hero RB builds if you need a late running back here. The way I approach this, I went through, looked at the contracts, all those things. Javonte is making $3 million. Miles Sanders is making $1.3 million. In my opinion, Sanders is complete toast. I don't know how you feel about that. I think Javonte's efficiency is obviously a major, major red flag. But if there's a running back on this roster as it stands that could carry the rock 15 plus times a game, probably it's Javonte. Now, I want to caution everybody. Nick Chubb is still out there. So is J.K. Dobbins. So my stance on this backfield is like, I kind of want to be a little overweight Javonte right now. Don't go crazy. But I definitely want to take some shots as well on Jaden Blue, because if there's one thing that he has that these guys do not, it is the explosiveness and the pass catching upside. And when you're going at RB 50 or later, like that's kind of what I'm looking for. So with the Dallas backfield, my approach right now is a little overweight Javonte, and I definitely want to target Jaden Blue. But understand, we don't want to go crazy. This is a 5th round rookie who has 214 career college carries. So he is not a 20 touch per game type of guy. You're banking on some efficiency, some explosiveness for a team that really has no weapons besides CeeDee Lamb.
I'm fine with Javonte right now. 125th overall, RB 39 is what I'm seeing right now. Like I'm fine with that price. I think you're going to see him move closer towards pick 100 as we see the summer progress, where it's like, I think he's the guy if they don't add another name. Jaden Blue, he has the receiving work, but with draft capital and a smaller player, I will be fading him if he keeps rising. And that's what we're going to see with a lot of these rookie running backs. On the show today, we'll talk about players that will likely rise and likely fall. In this period right after the NFL draft, there's a lot of day 3 running backs that are like, well, in the depth chart, they're obviously going to be the guys. At the beginning of the year, we know it is the veterans that get those early snaps. So I think Jaden Blue is one of those players that I will probably stay away from because he's going 167th right now. I bet there's a point during the offseason where he kind of switches back and he ends up being, 175, 180, around. I think he'll fall a little bit. So I'm fine with Javonte, though. It's not great. I still don't know. I was looking at their depth chart with wide receivers. I said, like, who are these jabronis behind CeeDee Lamb that they are running out there? Jalen Tolbert, Mingo, Turpin. Do you know Paris Campbell's on the roster?
I did actually know that. Fun fact.
He didn't know. Paris wasn't aware of it. But that team is so thin when it comes to best ball. Like CeeDee Lamb, we talked about this. Then it's what, Dak, and then you're just kind of left guessing of like, do I throw a dart at, Ferguson? Do I go with Javonte? So the Cowboys are interesting. They are an offense that I want to buy because they're cheap.
Yep, I think that's a good way to put it. The other one that I was looking at in general, this is kind of a theme, is just like we went into the NFL draft thinking these backfields are really going to get hit pretty hard and get shaken up. Maybe the NFL just said this class is so deep, so we'll wait till day 3 to take some of these guys. And you saw players like DeAndre Swift, Isaiah Pacheco, Tyron Tracy, kind of as winners from this NFL draft cycle. It doesn't feel good. Like, I'm terrified for Swift. I'm terrified for Pacheco. And I went through the KC backfield in particular and the Giants backfield. I think both Giants running backs are awesome targets right now because of the fact that it is those two guys. They can both catch the football and they kind of complement each other really well. So I'm interested in both guys taking a portfolio approach there. The Bears, I don't know, man. Something in the back of my mind is saying like Ben Johnson is not done. Now there's not many options out there, but we've seen the DeAndre Swift thing with Detroit before, when Ben Johnson was there, and it did not go great. The Chiefs, man, they're taking this screw them RBs approach to the next level because Pacheco, 7th round rookie, last year of his rookie deal, he's making nothing. They signed Elijah Mitchell to a 1-year deal. They have Brashard Smith as a 7th round pick, former wide receiver in college out of SMU, and Kareem Hunt is back on a 1-year deal. So they literally are investing like nothing in any of these guys. So you can't even use contracts to like help you decipher it. Do you have any feelings on these guys? Because my recommendation in the article was basically like, I want to be below weight Pacheco because of the fact that when it was crunch time last year, this team went with Kareem Hunt. Now, maybe that was injury related, but the team went with Kareem Hunt when it mattered most. And Hunt is just, yeah, he could fall in the end zone 6, 7, 8 times, and that's fine. But like, we know what he is, right? It's 3 yards in a cloud of dust at this point for him. I think Mitchell's like super interesting just because if you look at the contracts, he's actually making more than Kareem Hunt this year. And we at least know he has the explosive upside in his profile. And then for Brashard Smith, I recommended a full fade at this point because I think people are so excited about the landing spot. But we also need to remember the hit rate on 7th round rookie running backs is so bad. And granted, Isaiah Pacheco was that, so I understand it could happen. But historically speaking, a terrible bet. So that's my recommendation until we know he's even making the team or like making it as a contributor here. This whole backfield, I don't feel great about it.
Yeah, I think Smith, the factoid that he's a 7th round pick and Pacheco is also one is not something you should just say, well, look, they did this and therefore they will do this again. That's not how this works. I will wait, and yes, I will let people draft him. I'm fine with Pacheco. He's RB 34 right now. That price tag past pick 100 is totally fine by me. I think Mitchell's an interesting dart throw at the very end, but we mentioned it a couple weeks ago. The starting running back for the Chiefs at the end of the year might not even be on this roster. So I'm glad it's not expensive that we're having to pay up for these players, but I'll probably just draft some Pacheco and then be underweight the other guys. I did want to mention with Swift, DeAndre Swift is going right now behind where he finished last year. Last year he was 88th overall. He's going about 90th overall right now. His advance rate last year, Betz, was 20%, which was not terrible, actually. It was better than Aaron Jones, who went 10 picks ahead of him. So I know that Swift is annoying to all of us for what he was supposed to be in the NFL and what he was supposed to be in Dynasty. I think he's just going to be fine, and you're not overpaying for him yet. That's my main point. It's everybody's in on the Bears offense, and last year we were there's no way all of these guys can pay off. We talked about the 3 wide receivers. They were going too high. We talked about Caleb, and I was kind of very anti-Caleb in year 1 and him adjusting. I'm excited about the prospects, but I think Swift is I will pay that price right now if he's going around pick 90.
I think he's fine. I don't have a strong take.
RB 29?
The only thing that just sticks with me is you knew, I knew, everybody online knew, everybody in the NFL knew. If Gentee made it to 10, he was the pick. And so this is a team, a front office, a coaching staff that said, that's the guy, but they couldn't get him, and then things just didn't fall the right way in terms of their board. So I have a sneaky suspicion that they're not done adding, so I'm fine with it, but I'm definitely not going out of my way to prioritize him, if that makes sense.
No, that's a good point. And I think as we get into more best ball strategy, if you're one of those people that's hey, well, why don't you just take this player? There are different points of the best ball calendar where it's not advantageous to take certain guys because they can add, because there will be depth charts that we will see them in preseason. But especially when it comes to these late guys, they took somebody in the 7th round, Kyle Monungai, who's oh, this is a fun player. I liked his college film. Maybe he can replace Swift as an early down grinder. That's not a player right now that I start taking a ton, because the hit rate Betz mentioned and by hit rate, players that contribute as a 7th round running back, it is so low. I mean, it's just unbearably low if you saw the number of guys that actually, made a roster, and then on top of that made a deal in the first year. But we'll see. The Bears are popular, and that's not been a good thing in best ball the last couple of years.
When have they ever let you down, Kyle?
See, they let me down because you and I were both Justin Fields guys.
Well, he was great for fantasy.
Okay. Maybe that's where I can make my bed at night.
There you go.
Hey.
And they took the best tight end in the class.
They did?
Colson Loveland, baby.
I feel that's still debatable. I'm trying to think if they took another tight end later on.
If they took 2 tight ends, that would not be a good look, with Cole Kmet already under contract for a hefty amount.
Yep. All right, let's take a quick break and we'll jump into best ball.
If you're a lineman in charge of keeping the lights on, Grainger understands that you go to great lengths and sometimes heights to ensure the power is always flowing, which is why you can count on Grainger for professional-grade products and next-day delivery, so you have everything you need to get the job done. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistant's assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Best Ball Bonanza.
It's always a nice time as a podcaster when you get to update your drops. And the best ball one is one of my favorites. We get to use it for a select part of the year. When we're not talking DFS, we're talking best ball, and put it in there, and there you go. So Best Ball Bonanza, we'll be talking best ball for the next couple of months. If you're looking for best ball introductory content, we have a ton of stuff on our website. Basic stuff like, hey, how many players should I take at each position? We didn't want to go over that stuff for a lot of people if you've been longtime listeners, but on our website, you can look for it, roster construction. We have a whole tab that's just all best ball stuff. And we think that if you learn the right way, the right framework of how to play the game, then there's going to be variance. You're going to be weird things are going to happen in drafts. Some players are going to get injured. But at the end of the day, like if you're drafting 2 to 3 quarterbacks and 2 to 3 tight ends, you're starting off quite well, and you will be in a draft room where somebody else is like, nope, I want 6 quarterbacks because they're the best. They score the most points, Betz. And you take advantage of that. So on this podcast, we won't so much talk about the theory of best ball. We will more talk about what has changed in 2025, kind of updating and looking at the ADP landscape. And then Betz and I will talk about some players that were higher on and lower on in our initial ranks. But at the end of the day, I had to mention this part. The best ball is all about opportunity cost. The number one question that you and I get from somebody is a random DM says, who should I pick at this point? And it's really the wrong question to ask because every single player has an opportunity cost. If you take Josh Allen here, well, what does that mean for the rest of your draft and how do you adjust? So let's not so much talk about player picks, but more what is going on in best ball and how it looks different in 2025. And the first thing I want to say, Betz, is that I'm looking at each round in little buckets of like rounds 1 through 3, 4 through 6, 7 through 9, it's little 3-round buckets. And it seems like there are elite quarterbacks that we want to chase in the first 5-ish rounds. There's 5 of them. And then there's this massive drop-off. And the craziest thing is that Patrick Mahomes is not one of those elite quarterbacks for the very first time that's drafted way up high. So this is different than how we've looked at best ball before. Like there's always been elite guys, but there is this massive gap between Joe Burrow at pick 48 and Patrick Mahomes, who's going almost 30 picks later. So how does that change your approach of like, am I going to draft one elite guy and then just pair him with somebody else late? And I don't care who it is. You know, in the past it was Derek Carr, but Geno Smith or whoever, like that's
it's
what
so
it
true.
was.
It's so true. He's for like 3 years in a row, he's been like I need a third quarterback. We're in round 17 and 18. Derek Carr, come on down. Yeah, the real quick on the ADP, especially at quarterback, if anybody was drafting in some of the big boards, little boards, stuff like that before the NFL draft, things were a lot more quarterback thirsty in that landscape. So some of these guys would win a lot higher than they will in Best Ball Mania or if you're doing the puppies or whatever on Underdog. I think the quarterback prices in general are going to fall. But as it stands right now, I agree with you that the 4 at the top look, I think like they're pretty strong picks. I mean, you think about the ceiling of Allen, Lamar, Jaden Daniels, Jalen Hurts. Those are the guys that are always candidates to put up 25 plus points in a week, give you those spike weeks, those week winning upsides. I don't think Joe Burrow fits there for a pocket passer. This feels a lot to me like kind of the CJ Stroud dilemma of last year, where it's like, we know he's good. We know he'll put up spike weeks here and there, but relying on touchdown efficiency for someone who is not going to run at all, who is priced 5 spots below Jalen Hurts, it just sounds silly, right? Like when you know you're getting the tush push and those touchdowns. So my first stance is on the first bucket. I like most of them. I'm much lower on Joe Burrow based off his cost. And I feel like they're going a little bit too cheap. So I found myself, because the pre-NFL draft thirst of quarterbacks for stacking was pushed up, you're seeing guys like Caleb and Jared Goff and Bo Nix, who I like those guys all at some point, at some cost. They're too close to me, in my opinion. They're too close to Hurts, Daniels, Allen, Jackson. Like, I feel like there should be much more of a separation in ADP. So I found myself early on going for these elites and kind of skipping tier 2/3 and then coming back in later for somebody like, I don't know, JJ McCarthy, who's really cheap, or even Trevor Lawrence, who got some nice weapons, like stuff like that. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that second bucket, but it feels a little overpriced to me.
I'm looking at where Joe Burrow's going now, 48th overall, and last year, his ADP towards the very end was 89th. So you were getting this crazy discount. His advance rate, do you know what his advance rate was last year? 40%. So I think that you're paying a tax for what Joe Burrow did at the end of the year. And I always worry about players like that have just a crazy high TD rate. That if there's one offense you want to bet on in a passing offense, this is the team. But I think that without the rushing upside of some of these other guys, like I probably won't be paying. The way that I'm naturally inclined to play is that I want to go dirty at quarterback, that I want 3, and I'll find some guys in that middle range that I think can ascend and have these spike weeks and end up being QB5 or QB6. So like, for instance, I like Jordan Love at QB16. I think that is a pretty low price for a player, a top 10 offense that we could buy into. I like Herbert, but what's new? I'm always liking Herbert. Trevor Lawrence at QB20, JJ McCarthy you mentioned. Like, I think there's more guys in that third or fourth tier that I'm interested in, where you're paying up for Caleb Williams at QB10. You're paying up for Jared Goff, another player who, much like Joe Burrow, like you're riding the TD rate year to year. So I think that's my general approach, because there's the top 5. There's this next tier that starts at Mahomes and goes to pick 100 with Goff. And then the cliff isn't, like, it's not that big of a deal for me to go from Brock Purdy to Geno Smith at QB 26 and find 2 guys in that range. So I think that's going to be my approach. Is I don't feel like I have to get an elite, like if it works in ADP, like I'm happy to get one of those top 4 guys. But the next tier feels a little overpriced too, where I'll probably be going past pick 100. Now, some of these ADPs will rise, and they'll be connected to the players that people are stacking with them. But I like a lot of these quarterbacks, Purdy, Herbert, Jordan Love, all of these guys are going past pick 100.
Yeah, I think about this range almost like, can you arbitrage somebody going earlier? Meaning like in any week, like on the season, I think Baker's a pretty good bet to beat, I don't know, McCarthy or Justin Herbert from a total fantasy points standpoint. But when you're mixing and matching quarterbacks and stacks, and you think about kind of Frankenstein in the position is kind of what sometimes we talk about, or just like arbitrage and getting something similar later for a much cheaper cost, where the advance rate is going to be higher as a result. Like, what's the difference between, I don't know, Justin Fields, who can run a ton and give you a lot of spike weeks, and Joe Burrow at pick 50, who needs to throw a lot of touchdowns? Like, that's kind of how I'm thinking through this right now early in the process. I don't know what your thoughts are on that concept, but I think there's a lot of guys going in this third range. Drake May, I love this year because of the rushing upside. McCarthy, I love because of the scheme and the weapons. Lawrence, I love because of the scheme upgrade and the upgrade in weapons. All of those relative to cost. So things change when the landscape changes as far as ADP, but as it stands right now, those are some of my early targets.
And just remember, like, at the end of the day, I think we're all going to say Joe Burrow is going to throw 30-plus touchdowns and 4,000 yards, and he's going to be really, really good in the NFL, and I think he'll be good for fantasy. It's just, what does he have to do at the QB5 at the end of the 4th round, as opposed to what does Justin Fields have to do going past pick 100? Those are the conversations we're trying to have in best ball, and at the end of the day, we want teams that advance, and the way that teams advance is you find these arbitrage plays. You find players that are cheaper that have a similar archetype, and Fields I'm a sucker for Fields. I'm worried that there will be steam because we're not worried about anybody else stepping in there. Like, I thought that maybe they could draft another quarterback, or they bring in another pocket passer veteran, and they're like, okay, are they going to do what the Steelers did last year and just kind of like, who's the starting quarterback? Fields is the dude, so I like him at his price. I also know that I'm just a sucker. So anybody late past QB 20 that you're interested in?
So this is tough because once you get past QB 20, you're into the Tua, Stafford, Bryce Young,
the lefties, Penix and Tua,
Geno, Russell Wilson, where, especially in a tournament, you need to be thinking about, do I have security at the quarterback position that these guys are definitely starting when we get to December? Obviously, anybody can get hurt and all that, but like, there's a non-zero chance Jackson Dart takes over at some point for Russell Wilson, right? So like, I don't have any interest in that situation too much. Anthony Richardson, the upside is exciting, but he certainly is going to get benched if things don't go well. Like the second things don't go well, they're going to Daniel Jones. So I am queasy on that. Sam Darnold, I think, has security question marks. If the team just is not good, if he regresses to who he's been his entire career except for last year, we could see some Jalen Milroe. So like I don't have a ton of interest in that group. I like the Raiders this year quite a bit. Geno's super cheap. Bryce Young flashed a little bit at the end. He actually ran more than I remembered looking back at his last 7 or 8 games. So you get year 2 in the Canales system. Like that could certainly be some upside there. But outside of that, not a ton of interest. It kind of feels like no man's land if I'm being honest.
Yeah. Geno and Bryce were the ones that stood out to me. And you can find some cheap stat like Cam Ward. Normally I would say rookie quarterback's not something, if he's going to run enough, let's say 15 to 20 yards a game, that's fine at QB 23. He might have some volatile games, but in best ball, I can use that and just say, hey, I get 3 or 4 weeks from Cam Ward. He's QB 23. So I don't mind this tier, and I kind of tend to be a person that does have 3 quarterback builds. Like it's fun for me to play dirty here. But if the quarterbacks, if there's kind of this gap between the top 5 and then, I don't know, there's 3 rounds between Burrow and Mahomes, you kind of see the same thing at tight ends. And I want to bring up that point because when we talk about running backs and wide receivers, you kind of see how all of them are shoved in like rounds 3, 4, 5, and 6 this year, where it was a little different in the past where we had this kind of gradual curve of tight ends where it's like, okay, well, there's the elites, but then there's these other guys in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th rounds. Right now, it's Bowers, it's Trey McBride, and then you have to go until round 5 to get to Kittle, and then you have to drop another 2 rounds to get to Laporta. So there's this pretty big gap between what are you paying for at tight end and, where else do you want to spend your capital here? Because you start getting a little bit later, there's gross names, there's gross offenses, and we say all the time, I just want a player on the field. We used to say, just draft K-Dot as your tight end 3. He'll get you some snaps. That's not the case this year. So how are you handling this 2 elites and then kind of this drop-off at tight end?
Yeah, it's sort of a Bowers and McBride versus the rest of the group kind of thing, because McBride's ADP right now, we have in the doc 23.5. Like it's coming up to the, 18, 19, 20 mark probably in the next couple of weeks. He's a hot name. Everyone knows the regression is coming for touchdowns. So like I think he and Bowers are going to be pretty solidified 2nd-round picks. So it's basically those 2 versus the entire rest of the league. And I think that's fair. Like I think they're fairly priced. The guy that sticks out to me who's going, I think, a little bit cheaper than maybe he should for his upside and now consistency that we got is George Kittle, where I like Bowers. I love Bowers. I love McBride. But I think Kittle's a really interesting, again, kind of arbitrage on those guys for 3 rounds cheaper that will give you similar production potentially and potentially similar upside. We just got the contract. Ayuk coming off the ACL. I don't think Ricky Pearsall is the strongest prospect in the world. They have the easiest strength of schedule in the NFL this year. Debo's gone. CMC injury potential. Like it kind of all lines up, I think, for Kittle to be underpriced relative to the upside. So that's my take on the mid-tier. And then, once you get to Hawkinson and Jonnu, I don't see a ton of difference between that group all the way down to Njoku, right? So like tight end 6, tight end 5 to like tight end 13. These are kind of all the same guys to me as far as like how you can see the upside hitting. So I largely will be underweight as things stand right now with ADP on this tight end 5 to like tight end 12 group.
I think I agree with you. So with Kittle, he's morphed into a touchdown guy where before it's like, okay, you're going to get these massive yardage games and he's going to max out at like 5 or 6 touchdowns, but he's kind of morphed into their red zone guy, even as CMC's been hurt. So I don't mind that at all. Like McBride had his touchdown issues. Bowers last year, this is the stat I brought up a couple times, but he had 1.5 total fantasy points inside the 10-yard line last year. It was the lowest ever for a top 10 tight end. It's interesting to see how this team, now that was a terrible offense. I'm not going to use that stat to say this is what Bowers will be, but I think Kittle has a more established role inside the red zone on a better team that will score more points. I think we both project the Niners to score more points than the Raiders and the Cardinals. So I like that call. I also think it's worth mentioning that our boy Mark Andrews had a higher advance rate than Trey McBride, but the government doesn't want you to know that.
How about that, everybody? Mark Andrews. No, I'm just kidding. It started off bad. They had us in the first half, but we came back strong. I'm terrified for Mark Andrews this year. Like, I went into the offseason being like, he's cheaper than he's ever been. But there is a reason he's cheaper than he's ever been.
Buttlicker, our prices have never been lower.
Andy really brought this up to our company when he highlighted how touchdown reliant he was, which just when you're in the weeds of the NFL season, like sometimes this stuff doesn't really stick out to you, but like without the touchdowns, man, he was dreadful last year. So, and then you have the trade rumors that were all around. I think he's safe to make this team and still be on the team, assuming nobody trades for him, but it doesn't seem like the peak is where we used to be. So I definitely am hesitant on that one for sure.
I don't love paying elite tight end prices. Historically, I've not wanted to do that because you need that player to be so much better than not just the tight ends, but like the other wide receivers that were going right there. So whoever's going there as a wide receiver around Bowers, you need them to fail. It's not just like you need Bowers to be that much better. And I think the team will be a lot better. They also had the lowest EPA per rush attempt of any team over the last 5 years. We know that will get better with Ashton Genty. So there's just a lot of factors with the Raiders, but my early stance is I don't love paying the elite tight end price. I like cobbling together 3 or 4 tight ends and 4 even. I don't even care if you go 2 quarterbacks, but I want good offenses and players that can have outlier touchdown seasons. So Tucker Kraft is one of those guys you talked about last year that had a good touchdown season on an offense that we already liked for the Packers. I think there's a couple of guys here in this range. I'm like, okay, I don't mind, taking a shot later on. Like I think Jake Ferguson is a sneaky bet to be number 2 on the team in targets and rebound in the touchdown department because he was really bad last year. Talk about like Trey McBride, touchdown regression. Turd Ferguson was all turd, nothing else. So
just turds in the red zone everywhere.
That's it. So tight end, we'll get to talk about that more, but because we have 2 elite tight ends and only like 5 elite quarterbacks, it's given a lot of room in 2025 for this middle round running back. And the running backs I want to highlight is not so much the elite guys because they've all been pushed up the board. Best ball is usually a wide receiver thirsty draft. But this year, it seems like there's a bunch of mid-round running backs that are on the board, and it kind of has to change the question. Last year, a lot of the strategy was, who's your hero running back? Who's your one running back that you're going to ride? And then you get all this value. You don't have the same value this year. You just have a bunch of guys that are pushed up between 40th overall and about 90th overall. Okay, so there's about 16 running backs that we didn't have in the same spot last year. So how are you approaching this year of just, are you going hero RB early? Is that a main strategy? Or you're like, hey, you know what? I see the value of some of these middle round guys this year.
I think too, just to speak to real quick what you're saying, where historically it's been, you do have a ton of value, like around pick 100 to 120, just ballpark range. Like that's where you kind of get these upside uncertain situations. That's like where Chase Brown came from last year, like those kinds of guys. This year, as it stands right now, there's still a little bit of a lag from pre-draft NFL best ball ADP where there's kind of some rookies floating around in there and like the depth charts are super uncertain. So I think this bucket will change a lot in the next couple of months. So don't get tied to these ADPs for some of these guys that go in that range. But as far as the mid-round type guys, like you're kind of talking like pick 40 and beyond with like the James Cook to, I don't know, RJ Harvey, Caleb Johnson tier. There's a lot of really fun targets in this range that I like quite a bit. Mixon got not that much target competition or competition in general for the backfield.
He's pushed down a lot for somebody that finished as like a top 5-6 running back. I mean, He's just punished right now at pick 46.
He's not a sexy click. Like you're not going to be like, I can't wait to take Joe Mixon, but that's why he goes where he goes, and he's going to touch the ball 20 times a game. Chuba, I think, is an awesome target. I love him right now based off current cost. Kenneth Walker, huge fan of him at cost at RB20 because of the fact that we know this scheme shift is going to be to the run first. They've already talked about him in the fit with Koobs there as far as the outside zone scheme. I love that. James Conner is always just feels like a bland pick, but just produces all the time. I love the fit with Caleb Johnson in Pittsburgh. That's awesome. So yeah, there's a lot of guys in this range that I think are really strong targets that I haven't found myself trying to like double tap RB super early, but I want one of the elites if I can get them, and then like come back from my RB2 somewhere in this range, which historically in the past, based off the landscape, was not the case. As things stand now, these are all really strong targets.
Yeah, I know we're going to get a lot of questions about, isn't this guy a dead zone running back? A little bit different of a case in best ball because it skews towards wide receivers. So we'll talk more about that over the summer of like, where should you take players? It's hard when we look at historical data and say, this is what happened 5 years ago, and then say, this is what you should do in 2025 when the running backs just weren't drafted that way. I will say that David Montgomery feels like he's in the exact same spot he always goes in drafts, around pick 70.
That's a sweet
They didn't
spot.
even have to change anything.
They just imported all last year's data. They're like, here you go, David. This is where you belong.
Yeah, I mean, there's guys on here like we thought Brian Robinson Jr. would have competition, and now we look up, we're like, oh, you're RB33 going around pick 100 on a good offense. It's not a sexy pick either, but you're probably going to be the guy. Where there's a bunch of guys going around, I'm like, I cannot fathom taking Cam Scatterbo right now over Brian Robinson Jr.
Yeah, his ADP will fall. I think Scatterbo's will.
Okay, good, because I my initial look at ADP was that he's going to be a major faller, especially as we get a little closer. But like, that shocks me a lot. DeAndre Swift, we talked about him earlier. Yeah, I like some of these RBs in this range. I usually would say I'm not in on this. As we get closer over the summer, we'll get to give some of these names that are dart throws, some true nasty boys in best ball that we'll talk about. So we'll talk about those more later. Let's take a break, and then we'll talk about some wide receivers.
If you're a lineman in charge of keeping the lights on, Grainger understands that you go to great lengths and sometimes heights to ensure the power is always flowing, which is why you can count on Grainger for professional-grade products and next-day delivery, so you have everything you need to get the job done. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
All right, we've come to the holy grail of best ball. We've talked about the ADP landscape of quarterbacks, tight ends, running backs, but we got to finish talking about wide receivers because, well, everybody is thirsty for them. In fact, there are 40 wide receivers going in the top 6 rounds. That's roughly 55%. Now, it's technically 55.5%, but when you get the number, you round down or round up depending on what you need for the show. Am I right?
That's what we need.
Yeah. So we know that a lot of wide receivers are going to go early. I will give you some of the advance rate data from last year where it's like, it's very skewed that Jamar Chase, if you didn't draft Jamar Chase, you could have been out because his advance rate was 51% bets. 51% for a wide receiver is insane.
It's insane for any wide receiver, period, but it's insane because he was a first-round pick. Like, there was no value with Jamar. I mean, maybe you got him at like pick 9 or 10 when there was the holdout scare, but like he was always a first-round pick. So the fact that that was the case was just insane.
Yeah, there's this period, though, at the end of the first round where a lot of these guys that you would have picked, whether it be A.J. Brown, who was good when he played, but he got hurt, so that hurt you in best ball. Nico was good when he played, but also got hurt. Garrett Wilson was not a good advance rate player. Drake London had spurts, like games where he went off, but also not a great advance rate player. Marvin Harrison Jr., Debo. A lot of these guys that went around the 1-2 turner in the second round did not help teams last year. And that's where you saw the running backs, right? Like a lot of the running backs that came through were Saquon, Derrick Henry, all of these guys are going in round 2 and round 3. Josh Jacobs, that crushed for teams. So this year, I'm looking at the wide receivers that are going around that 1-2 turn. And we have them in our rankings, but I just want to get your general feel. Right now, pick 10, we have Nico, Amon-Ra, Brian Thomas, Drake London, Ladd McConkey, and A.J. Brown. It's hard to poke holes in any of those guys and say, oh, they're not good, don't draft them. But not all of those guys are going to pay off. So is there any offense that you're scared of, or anybody there at the 1-2 turn you're like, I'm not going to be overweight on this player?
The 1-2 turn, it's hard to poke holes in these guys, quite frankly. I mean, they're the guys, right? These are the best wide receivers in the game for the most part. And they're all in the peak of their career. Like, I'm just double checking that I'm saying that, but like, they're all still in the peak of their career. So the truth, I don't really have a strong take on this range. I am kind of in line with market. Do you have a take here?
I have London a little bit ahead of where he goes. So he goes right after Bowers and Henry, and I'll probably be a little bit lower on those players. So I think I'll bump London up 2 or 3 spots where I think he belongs as a fringe first-round player. I'm totally fine with that there. Nico scares me sometimes.
Oh, come on.
I love
Kyle.
Nico. He scares me as the 10th overall pick.
He's an alpha, dude. He is him. And you're worried about Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel?
No, but can I give you the math?
All right, give me the math, you nerd.
It's so hard to pay off as 10th overall pick, man.
I know.
Every single spot. This is a blessing and a curse. Is Nico's awesome. He's a wide receiver 1. He's a baller, and he deserves it. But when I play best ball, I look at every single player and what they have to do. Historically, I compare them to, if you are this player, here's what you have to do at this spot. And it's like, man, you really have to ball out. He has to get 9-10 touchdowns.
I think a bet on Nico this year in general, like in a vacuum, all of his metrics and everything about him he is fantastic. I think a bet on Nico this year is more of a bet on, do you think Stroud can bounce back to somewhere in between this past year and rookie season. Like, I think the truth on him is probably somewhere in the middle. I use this on the Dynasty show. They revamped the offensive line. Jason was like, they didn't make it better, but they changed it. They changed the offensive line. They got him some better weapons to complement Nico. Like, if you remember last year at the end of the season, like, they were throwing to Xavier Hutchinson and the ghost of Robert Woods. So I think systemically, the environment around Stroud and his guys is going to be a little bit better this year. So I'm cool with Nico where he goes. I don't know. I just like good football players, and I guess Kyle doesn't, but I think Nico is a totally fine pick.
No, I only like players that are out of the league. Those are the guys that I really, really feel good. Okay, so when I mention Nico going that high, I look at the rest of the team as, Wendy's value menu players, man. Like last year we were paying
this is nice value here.
Well, okay, remember what we were paying last year for the Texans? And
everything.
Yes, you were paying so much for this. This is Nico at 10th overall, but then I look at the other players on the team. Mixon, we mentioned, is going a lot lower, RB16. Christian Kirk, probably the least sexy pick that you could have at wide receiver 52. Of course you're in. You're always in on Christian Kirk. Jaden Higgins, who's their second best wide receiver they drafted behind Jalen Noel, in my opinion. And then Stroud, and then Dalton Schultz sounds like a perfect tight end 3 boring pick at the end of your draft.
Yeah, I think the take home here from last year, when you think about where teams are going and where players are going, like it was crazy in hindsight to say, wow, Tank Dell, Nico, Stroud, Mixon, and Stephon Diggs were all top, I think 60 picks. Let's call it. It's impossible for those guys for that to be right, basically, unless this is the best offense we've ever seen. And I think about this. It was not. And I think about kind of the similar concept right now, which, again, I love the Bengals. Who doesn't? But you've got Jamar Chase as the first overall pick. You've got T. Higgins as a second-round pick. Joe Burrow is a top 50 player. Chase Brown is will be a top 30 player in the next few weeks. Something's kind of got to give is kind of the point here. We've seen that over the years with these stacks. That's where I would really caution. That's kind of the take home for me in this lesson of ADP is when these guys go so high, they have to be perfect. Otherwise, they're relative to advance rate, they're suboptimal picks.
Yeah, and I'm looking at some of the players last year for wide receiver that failed, like the Dolphins, right? Like if you're picking Tyreek that high, picking Waddle, you not only like did they have down years, but like apart from Achane, I think it was just like and Jonnu, who I don't think anybody came in saying Jonnu's going to be this guy, but it's like this is a team if you just faded the team, you probably made out well in best ball. And I'm not saying to do that with the Bengals. You just have to look at the team level approach. So I think early on, not a sponsor, but I think the Texans are in contention to be part of the Wendy's super value menu team.
But could be a sponsor.
Yeah, not a super bar team. Not the same.
Dude, that pudding was so good.
Somebody's like, I'm still thinking about the pudding. Okay, quick question with wide receivers, and then we'll move on to some of our picks. The question that I asked myself, and maybe it's a dumb one, is can I find a team's wide receiver one later than they should be going? Like normally you're paying up for the guy that's like, this guy is the number one option for his team. It's very clear. And I tried to only pick guys that I thought were clear, but I'm just going to go through a list real quick. These are wide receiver ones for their team, at least by ADP. And they're going a lot lower than maybe they should be. So behind a lot of wide receiver twos for teams, but like Chris Olave, how could we get hurt again by Chris Olave? But he's going as wide receiver 34 right now.
I'm in.
Okay, good. I'm in too, but I'm ready to lose money. Juwan Jennings is the first drafted 49ers wide receiver at wide receiver 36.
I'm in.
I think I'm in. I think there's a route where this is just a massive overpay though.
Possibly. Yeah. I think it could go one of two ways. If Ricky Pearsall takes a leap in year 2 and he turns into like the top guy as far as the wide receiver room is concerned, assuming Brandon Ayuk, in the injury games, then that's where Jennings, I think, looks bad at cost. I think Pearsall is potentially overpriced. So that's my stance on that situation. And I'll talk about Ayuk in a minute. We're going to talk about some injured guys. I am much lower than consensus on Ayuk. So that's where I come back to Jennings and say, okay, I think this is fine.
Well, you know that I like Jennings and you know that I will never like Pearsall.
Yeah, I mean, it had to hurt though in week 17 when he was going off last year, didn't it?
Oh, it hurt in best ball.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
In best ball, if you guys weren't around, there was one tournament, I forget which one, the Hound Dog, was that the one I was in?
Hound Dog.
Where I was basically like locked in top 5, and for a long time I was leading it until like the final like 2 games. Because didn't they play the last game?
That was the last game of the regular season, yeah.
49ers and Lions?
I think so.
I believe.
Yep.
Yeah, so I was sitting 1 and 2 in this tournament, and I did not think that of all people, Ricky Pearsall would come back from the grave and just, I lost 10K or something like that because of Ricky Pearsall. Okay, let's go through these real quick. So just say in, out, or at cost, you're fine. Jerry Jeudy, wide receiver 38.
In.
I think I'm in too. Jacoby Myers, wide receiver
In.
39. I know you're in there. Diggs, wide receiver 40.
At cost is fine.
Okay. Jaden Reed, what a confusing player at wide receiver 43. Now, Golden is going at wide receiver 45. I think there will be a point where Golden passes him in best ball. They both feel like players that you would label as better in best ball players.
For sure. I think Reed's probably a little overpriced because of the fact that he's not going to be on the field that much. But if you want more of my thoughts on Green Bay, it's in the article I just put up on the site.
All right, 2 more. Khalil Shakir is going out as wide receiver 44.
It's fine.
Khalil Shakir is a funny player because in full PPR, he's always been a little bit better. This isn't full PPR on Underdog. And he's actually been fine. Like he's kind of been like wide receiver 30-ish. So he can be like a win rate player. I just don't think he's going to be like the player you need.
Yeah.
And I'll probably eat those words. And then last one, Josh Downs is the latest that I found. I could be wrong. Wide receiver 1 in ADP for a team. He's going as wide receiver 51. And Pity City is going a little bit later. But what do you think about Josh Downs?
I like the talent. I think he's fairly priced, but there's obviously upside concerns because of the quarterback play.
Yep. I would agree with that. All right, so we're going to close out this podcast by giving you some of our quick takes for some of these positions. And some of these are reflected in the rankings, but we wanted to make sure on the podcast that we gave these to you. The first category we're going to give for best ball is closing line value targets. In other words, these are players that we expect them to rise in ADP, so you might as well be drafting them right now. rookie wide receivers, I can guarantee you they will rise in ADP. Matthew Golden, we just mentioned. McMillan's at wide receiver 25. I think he's close to being capped, but you will get some buzz over the summer that they view him as an alpha, and he'll go up a little bit in price. But rookie wide receivers are a guaranteed riser. It happens every year. I wrote an article last year called Riding the Summer Wave of ADP and Rookie Wide Receivers. What a title.
Great title. Definitely SEO friendly.
Yeah, everyone loves searching for that stuff. The Dallas wide receiver 2, whoever that is, if it's Amari Cooper and they sign him, that's going to go up a ton.
Yeah.
He's at pick 202 right now. So he's in no man's land. Nobody knows if he's on a team or not, but if they sign Amari Cooper or if they sign somebody else, which we kind of expect them to, I think that'll change. But really, like after the NFL draft is one of the times you see ADPs rise the most because we have a bunch of rookies like Isaac Tesla that were like, oh, who's this guy? I didn't know the Lions are going to take him earlier and trade 2 third-round picks. I guess I need to be drafting him in best ball. There's players like that will rise, and then we'll get more information about free agents signing or people being cut. So those are really the big ones. I also think there will be certain players that we look at and go like, oh, that's the starter? That's the starting tight end? Mason Taylor is the starting tight end for the Jets? All right, I should probably be drafting him.
He's going to be the starting tight end, Kyle, for the Jets. Yeah, real quick on that point that like the free agent signings and cuts happen. Like it doesn't mean that these players are that you're right when you take them, but the point is like they will rise. Whenever a player signs, they will rise. Right now, J.K. Dobbins is hanging around, Nick Chubb's hanging around. I don't know that I'm targeting those guys, but like I'll snag them when they do sign, assuming it's a good landing spot and everything, and then probably be out when they get out of control. And if you can predict some of this stuff, over time you will be a positive EV best ball player. Remember a couple years ago, it was the Dalvin Cook, Alexander Madison summer, where everybody knew Madison was going to be the RB1. The writing was on the wall. Dalvin Cook's going to be gone. Now, from a process standpoint, that was a great play because you probably got Madison at pick 100. He closed it, BBM at like 45th overall or something like that. That's a great time to be like, I had the best prices. I'm out on that guy. So if you can sometimes predict these movements, and hopefully we can help you out with that throughout the summer, that's kind of how I would approach these things. Obviously, in hindsight, the Madison thing did not work out, but you got insane value on a player that rise, 3 rounds, 4 rounds.
Yeah, I mean, like there's one of the greatest wide receivers of all time, Keenan Allen, not on the team right now.
Do you think he signs, or is he done?
I hope he signs with a team that he can win with. He deserves it, man. I mean, the government, there's a lot of things the government doesn't want to tell you. They don't want to tell you that he had a better advance rate than Malik Neighbors last year.
Oh boy, here we go.
This is propaganda. Just really, really dumb stats. Keenan Allen, I love him. All right, so give me a couple of players that likely will fall. And we want to be ahead of that, meaning like at their ADP right now, I'm not touching them. And then at a certain point, it's fine to draft them. But last year, there's a lot of injured guys, which you're going to bring up. But some of these rookie running backs right now, we have draft fever. And everyone's like, oh, man, I like this guy could be the RB2. He could be the RB3. He could probably step up. Like Ollie Gordon is one of those players where not only did he fall in the NFL draft, but like I can't fathom using a top 200 pick on a day 3 running back like this. That's just not how I play.
Yeah, I think the rookie running backs that were the non-elite guys, we all thought they might be sneaky picks early in best ball. Right now, they kind of all look like losers. Like, what losers, Kyle? Ollie Gordon.
Absolute losers.
We mentioned Brashard Smith earlier on. Damian Martinez did not land in an awesome spot. Draft capital was terrible. Just a couple examples there. I think Rome Odunze is probably going to fall a decent amount just because the additions of Luther Burden and Colston Loveland. Currently going as wide receiver 30. It's mostly just a target competition thing. Now, the metrics as a rookie were not good. So I still think he's talented, but we at least have to ask ourselves the question of where is the truth on this player? Because it clearly was not great last year. Better scheme, of course, but I think he'll come down in price. So I'm holding off on my Rome Odunze exposures right now. Also throw out, I think Tucker Kraft could fall a little bit just because of the ascension of Matthew Golden, and Jaden Reed is still going to be a player people like. Generally speaking, we don't love taking the 3rd or 4th target option that high in drafts, so I could see Tucker Kraft kind of falling a little bit. We'll see. Could be wrong on that, but right now I'm holding off on those couple guys. And then just real quick on some injured players. I feel like this season there's actually not a ton of glaring obvious ones. Like last year, the fade on Nick Chubb couldn't have been more clear in my opinion. When we did the show, he was going at like pick 100, and that was crazy. But this year, I think people are getting a little bit better at this. The one player that sticks out to me that is definitely, for me, an avoid right now is Brandon Ayuk. Coming off the board, 88th overall, he's a top 90 player. This was one of those ACL plus type injuries. And even as recently as, let me pull the date, April 26th, so last week, Kyle Shanahan, quote, "He might not be ready to go right away. We'll just have to see how that goes." So I think you're going to get more of that type of news over the next several months. He's probably starting training camp on the PUP list. I think is an outside chance to start the regular season on the PUP list. Not sure on that yet, but his surgery was not till November. So this is a player I'm not expecting to be 100% till late in the season. And then two guys I'm monitoring very closely that in general, I think that they'll be okay. But I'm kind of like warning signs on for these guys is Rashee Rice, who had the knee surgery from the week 4 injury of last year. This is an LCL repair and a posterior lateral corner injury for all my nerdy medical people out there, as we all know. But basically, my TLDR on this, and you can read all this stuff in the injury tracker as part of the UDK Plus. Basically, the recovery is not as reliable and straightforward because it's not a super common surgery. So everything I've seen so far has been good, but I'm still monitoring Rashee Rice very, very closely. We also have to remember there could be a potential suspension with him because of the incidents of last offseason. And then Chris Godwin, currently wide receiver 32. I think he'll fall in general because of the addition of Emeka Egbuka. People are still drafting Jalen McMillan, obviously Mike Evans. So he'll fall for that. But also I want to make sure that we're monitoring his recovery off the ankle fracture and dislocation. Just recently, we had their GM, Jason Light, saying on April 24th, quote, "He's still on track with his rehab. We're shooting for week 1 with him." So too early to know, but those are guys I'm monitoring that could fall if we get bad injury news.
Yeah, and I trust you on a lot of these things. Of you know the surgery dates, and then like here's the general timeline. Rice terrifies me as a top 40 pick. That's so expensive of what you're asking him to do, and I don't know. So he's been a tough click for me.
Yeah, I think we also have to remember like how clean the run out was last year. Like if you bought the dip on the injury, or not the injury, I'm sorry, the suspension concerns, kind of got lucky on that, right? Like I was taking him a ton when he was in the 80s. Sometimes he got to 90. Right. Then he steamed all the way back up when it was like, oh, we're in the clear. But the run out was insanely clean when he was on the field because of the Hollywood Brown injury in August. So Brown's back, Worthy in year 2. You've got the injury, you've got the potential suspension. I'm just not sure. I think he's an insanely talented player for what he does in their offense. So I don't want to be out, but I'm definitely not chasing him up boards if he rises.
All right, let's tease. Let's give a pro tease on the podcast of a couple players that were higher on than ADP, and we'll just do some quick hitters, and then a couple that were lower on, including one that longtime listeners will be very disappointed in you, and then one from me. They're gonna hate us. So I mentioned earlier Drake London. I have a little higher, but the player I want to highlight is Kenneth Walker. I have him as a top 50 player in my rankings, and yet he's going as RB20, 62nd overall. Before an injury late, he was averaging 16 fantasy points per game through the first 12 weeks. And the best part is we saw a major uptick in his passing game involvement. Now, that might change a little bit, but I actually think the offense is going to be way more efficient with Kubiak as their OC. He was number 1 among all running backs in forced missed tackle rate. 71% of his rushing yards came after contact, and he was 8th in expected fantasy points per game. I think Kenneth Walker, early on, this is very early, I think he's probably going to be my strongest stance of any player we talk about.
I like it. Yeah, you didn't even mention some of the offensive line upgrades in the NFL draft. Obviously, they spent the first round pick on Gray Zabel, so I like it. I'm going to throw out Chuba. I already mentioned I'm higher than consensus on him. He got the contract. Jonathan Brooks, I don't think plays this year. Rico's a very solid RB2, but they didn't invest a ton in him. They took a day 3 running back. From week 2 on, last year he was playing 80% of the snaps with 21 opportunities per game. The team loves him. The environment, I think, could be better this year. The year 2 in Canales' system, they took Tet McMillan, giving them another playmaker to help support the offense in general. Their win total is higher this year, so you could see some more competitive game environment. So I like Chuba quite a bit where he goes. Like I said, I'm like 11 or 12 spots ahead of ADP on him as things stand today.
All right, a player that I'm lower on, I love Walker in this range, and I've kind of had a love-hate relationship based on James Cook on where he's gone in ADP. I do not like his ADP right now. I have him at 50th overall. He's going at 40th, which may not sound like that big of a difference, but I'm basically telling people, like, I don't want you to take James Cook unless he falls way behind ADP. 16 rushing touchdowns is wild when you consider he had fewer opportunities, snaps, and yards the year before when he had 2 rushing touchdowns. 7.7 TD rate led the NFL, meaning 7.7% of his attempts resulted in a touchdown, and 43% of his fantasy points came via touchdowns over the last 6 years. That is a major signal for regression. So James Cook is going to be one of those players that entering year 4, I think he deserves a contract extension. This is not a very fair world at all. So James Cook, I'll be lower on.
Yeah, you always highlight these types of guys where the touchdown regression is coming, and generally speaking, it's usually pretty right. So I'm with you. The same is true for Terry McLaurin. And this is probably the first time
I dare you to say that to his face.
Ever since he's been in the NFL that I'm lower than consensus on Terry McLaurin. You got to get out. When you're right, finally, it's time to get out. He's currently going as a top 30 pick. I get Jaden Daniels is so exciting. You know, Terry's a good player. Their games fit perfectly together. I agree with all of that. But he overproduced in the touchdown department by a massive margin. PFF's expected model had him at 7.7 expected touchdowns. Scored 13 last year, and he wasn't an insane yardage guy. Like, he's kind of been hovering around 1,000 yards every year, which is good, don't get me wrong. But if he comes down to 6, 7, 8 touchdowns and the same yardage totals are there at his cost, it looks like a player who probably won't be super beneficial as far as that goes. So I am lower than consensus on Terry, and that pains me to say.
I'm going to give you 2 more Terry stats just to make you feel even worse. It was the fewest receiving yards by a top 6 fantasy wide receiver since 2017. So he didn't even hit 1,100 receiving yards. That's not good. Oh, boy. He also never hit 24 fantasy points in a game. Every other wide receiver in the top 30 had at least one game. So, like, his games were good. They weren't great. And I agree with you. The touchdown is going to be something, touchdown regression is going to be something that people talk about a lot, which stinks because we love the player. And as we close, I just want to say one more player that Betz and I both are in agreement. People of this podcast will not like. We're not big on KDOT this year. And I know there's people out there that's like, I already penciled him in as my highest exposure tight end. It's not going to work, guys. It's not the year. This isn't it. So I know there's somebody out there who's like, I did not expect you to say that.
I mean, what wins in best ball, Kyle? It's always the 5th option in the passing game that just runs the routes. Always, that's what you need. Yeah, man, it's tough. Obviously, Ibuka really hurt him. We'll always have that 4-week stretch last season.
And I don't want it to ever be anything else other than that.
That's what I'm saying. You got to get out. Sell when you're high, as the market says. Yeah, it's tough. We both dropped him below pick 200 in our ranks, so it's fine if you're drafting buck stacks, but like, not much else to say.
Yeah, so make sure you check out our best ball rankings, which are live. They're in the DFS pass. We will try to get those updated as frequently as we can. Make sure you reach out in Discord if you have any questions, Betz. Tell everyone goodbye.
Feels good to be back, man. The summer of best ball is here. Hope you guys enjoy the rankings that should be up on the site very soon. And as we are every Friday throughout the summer, we're back next week. More best ball talk. We'll see you then. Have a good weekend.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Fantasy Footballers DFS and Betting Podcast. Don't forget to visit us on the web at thefantasyfootballers.com.
Imagine what's possible in your business career when learning doesn't get in the way of life. At Capella University, our game-changing FlexPath learning format is available in select business programs and lets you learn at a time and pace that works for you. That means you don't have to put your life on hold while earning your business degree. Instead, enjoy learning your way and earn your degree without missing a beat. A different future is closer than you think with Capella University. Learn more at capella.edu.
Mum's the word, but we're telling everyone. It's BOGO 50% off time at Designer Shoe Warehouse. Just in time for Mother's Day, buy any pair of shoes, get a second qualifying pair 50% off. Treat mom or yourself to the perfect spring styles from must-own brands. And hurry, Unlike a mother's love, this deal won't last forever. So make mom proud and score BOGO 50% off at your DSW store or DSW.com today.